Hello everyone, welcome to PHTV Channel 4 in Palos Heights. I'm Sue Jankowski and this is the Travel Show where we bring you some place fabulous, in this case today, lots of places fabulous that you can go and visit. And as always, we have our good friend Kathy Janes from I just drew a blank. Class Act Travel.
Not a problem.
And Word, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody.
And Kathy always brings us a really great and interesting guest, who today is Rich Davis. Rich, welcome to the program today.
Thank you, Sue. Glad to be here.
Rich is sales manager for the Midwest for Yalla Tours USA. Now, on this business card, this is really pretty exciting. It is specialist to the exotic Mediterranean, the Arabian Peninsula, and Cuba. I mean, if you're looking for a vacation that I think is going to be out of what you normally, it's not the Florida vacation. It is something going to be really unique. And I think that's going to make this really fascinating, Rich, today. So thank you for being here and telling us all about Yalla Tours.
Well, you're welcome. And we are the bucket list company.
That's a very good way to put it. I like that.
We sell destinations, at least in most areas of the U.S., that people put on their bucket list, and some make it and some don't. So we're hoping that more will make it.
Yes, right.
They can try. So, I mean, there's a big list here. I just want to read you this list of possibilities: Bahrain, Cuba, Egypt, Greece, Israel, Jordan, Morocco, Oman, Turkey, and I don't even know what this is.
United Arab Emirates, or
thank you.
UAE.
It's an abbreviation, UAE. Yes. Okay, so there's a lot of, I did not know that either. There's a lot of choices for you, but we're going to start with a country that a lot of people are so interested in right now and have a lot of questions about, and you probably do too, and that is Cuba. So, Rich, your company goes to Cuba. Give us a whole overview about people who are really interested in wanting to do that.
Well, Cuba is a special market in that it's one of the few destinations that have let's say, legal controls on them from the U.S. government. Up until just about a year or so ago, when North Korea was added to that list, Cuba was the only destination. Now, Cuba, of course, in history, used to be a destination that maybe our parents or grandparents went to. They would visit the casinos there. They'd slather themselves up and lay on the beach and cook, and to lobster form, and just have a good time. Drink a lot of the rum and smoke some fine Cuban cigars. But with the travel and trade embargo, which was put into place over 50 years ago now, travel to Cuba was severely restricted for U.S. residents.
Do you remember Joan Peterson at all that worked at our office?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, she passed away. She had gone to Cuba when you could, and she always raved about one of the beaches on Cuba, how beautiful it was. It's all she would ever talk about. She just said it was just such a beautiful, untouched, natural area. She just loved it.
Well, she may have been talking about Veradero Beach,
yes,
which is
it was,
still one of the most beautiful beaches and very, very popular for visitors to Cuba. Now, the situation with Cuba is that due to the travel and trade embargo, which is still in effect and still applies to U.S. citizens and also foreign nationals living here. So somebody has a green card, they're living here, working here, just because they have an additional passport for another country doesn't mean they can circumvent U.S. laws.
So they're restricted then too?
They are restricted as well. So what does that mean for the person who maybe would call your office, Kathy, and say, you know what, I want to go to Cuba, how can I get there?
I've had a few, and I don't have a good answer, and I'm being very honest with you, Rich. I don't know what to say to them because I just don't know what it is right now.
Well, I have a good answer for you.
Thank you.
Write this down.
Yes, I will.
There will be a test. Well, the test is when the client calls you and says, travel to Cuba is restricted by license. So there's 12 different licenses to go to Cuba. And for most of us, quote-unquote, normal people, we have to travel under one or two or three of those licenses, because if you're a journalist, you can go to Cuba and you can visit there just on the basis of your job.
Okay.
If you're an artist of some sort, you can be invited to go by a Cuban type of organization, be it a dance troupe or literary group or whatever, and you can go down there and you can do a lecture, do a talk, and go there legally. But now for the 99.9% of us who are not artists like me, or musicians, and I'm certainly not a journalist, they have to travel under the other licenses. Now, the most popular license that virtually everybody but us is using are the people-to-people tours. And those are highly regulated by the U.S. government, by the way, not by the Cubans, by the U.S. government, in that they have to travel in large groups. They have to follow a very busy, structured format, which involves 8 hours of meaningful interaction with the Cuban people. And the companies that provide those trips have to keep detailed records of those trips. And you, no matter what license you travel under as a visitor to Cuba, have to keep that information for 7 years. Has to
What?
keep it on file. So every trip I've made to Cuba since 2003, I have little files on what I did there and what my purpose in visiting Cuba
So
was.
they
Interesting.
could ask you for that at any time?
The
U.S. government?
Yes, the U.S. government. And Cuba is regulated by the U.S. government by the Treasury Department and a division within that called OFAC. OFAC. You have to be very careful how you say it, otherwise it can come out as something else. So if you have an accent, you could end up saying
the
something
wrong
that
thing,
will
yes.
get you thrown off of TV. But they regulate the travel to Cuba. So they can theoretically, and sometimes have done, contact people who have traveled to Cuba and say, you know what, we understand you were in Cuba in 2011. What were you doing there?
Oh, really?
It can really happen, yes. And that's why it's very important that people visit somebody like you and your agency and that they contact a reputable and reliable provider of travel to Cuba.
Such as your company.
Such as my company. There are others. I mean, I'll be very honest, there's some very good companies and cruise lines selling and promoting Cuba. But we do have a difference in how we operate in Cuba, and that's based on the license, the particular license that we use, which is not the people-to-people license.
Well, what do you do that would be different than the people-to-people? Do people not have to keep the same kind of records?
People have to keep their records, and we provide the records in the form of an itinerary for people, very detailed, so all they have to do is hang on to those. And the types of tours that we do are basically humanitarian trips. And
Humanitarian.
now, that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, and the definition can vary, but in our case, it means that we want to bring items that the Cuban people really need down to Cuba, such as soaps, shampoos, medical supplies, school items, even baseball equipment, gloves, balls, that sort of thing. And they can do that in their own suitcase, or now with the scheduled air, they can actually have an additional suitcase that they can bring along. So when they go through customs and immigration, they don't have to declare it in customs as items. They are personal gifts, which they are for the Cuban people. Because if they declare them in customs and they go through that ordinary process, I'm not going to say that some of the things might not reach you once you get on the other side, but sometimes things might not reach you when you get to the other side.
Do you also need a visa besides?
You need a visa, and we supply those.
Okay.
Otherwise, they can be purchased separately if you're traveling with somebody else. But the idea is that we go to places on our trips where these items are needed. And we go to, for instance, senior citizens' homes, which in some cases also serve as preschool outlets.
Oh.
So they put them together, which is actually a very good idea.
Oh, I think the older people would enjoy that.
They do, and it's almost overwhelming at times. We've gone down there and have been, we walk into the senior citizens' homes, and they were applauded. One time they put us up on stage and they actually sang us a song.
Oh, how great!
It was very humbling too,
Yeah, yeah.
because. And so we had items, medical supplies, other things which we delivered to them, and then in some cases some had things for the children there too. We also go to the synagogue, the old synagogue in Havana, which is a very historical site, and they dispense medical supplies for not only people within the Jewish community there, which isn't very large, but also everybody who needs it.
That's
All right,
great.
so that again fulfills that humanitarian license per se, and that covers you guys for that.
It fulfills us, and it's not really a cover in that we feel it's a very important part of any kind of travel down there for the situation, because it's not a workaround, because in the end we've had any number of visitors who have gone with us tell us that the humanitarian part, the delivery of the items to the Cuban people or organizations, was the most meaningful part of the trip. And that includes if we had worked in a beach stop, and no matter how many cigars we smoked or how much rum we drank. So that gives you an idea. Once you get down there and you see that it's so well appreciated, that it's really it's an emotional
It's
type
got to
of
be a
visit.
humbling feeling too with that.
It is. It is.
Well, that's really kind of wonderful. So, in then that trip, are they picking? Where do they go? Is it mostly like a number of humanitarian stops, or we do one stop and then we visit historical places? What kind of a
You're
trip
right.
is it?
You're hitting right on it. It's we don't just line up all the stops right in a row and do them. In fact, we build a lot of times an itinerary around the different stops, and most of our trips, unless they're shorter ones into Havana, will take you down into the countryside and down to Trinidad de Cuba on the south coast, which is a beautifully preserved old city, UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's as if time stopped in the 1800s there.
Oh, cool.
It's just a remarkable experience, and we make a stop there at the main cathedral in the town.
It's got to be neat.
So that's how we work the itineraries, which allows for more flexibility, honestly, than the typical tours offered by others.
Because there's the ones that do the cruise around the entire island, and that's just a real busy one. I mean, it really is, because it makes a few stops going around the island, and they have to come from Jamaica to get there. They can't even leave from Cuba. So that's a whole different story.
So, in these tours, is this on a cruise? Are we flying into Cuba?
We're flying into Cuba,
Okay.
and I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but a good percentage of the time we're flying into Havana, and then departing from there. And we have a hotel base in Havana, very nice 5-star property, high rise, and we usually decompress there for a day or two, and then go on the road and visit some of the countryside and down to Trinidad and different historical aspects of Cuba, including Ernest Hemingway's home down there.
He did have one there, yeah.
He is a big figure in Cuba, and it's always a popular stop.
That would be, yeah. Okay, so this is like once you get there, you're touring on the land.
Yes.
This is not a boat tour.
We don't do the cruises. Other companies do, and some will do a combination of some land and then the cruises. But the cruise lines have their own itineraries, and then they offer excursions off the ship, which we also do privately. And so it offers an alternative. If somebody doesn't want the programmed one on the ship, we can offer an alternative to them.
But this is actually a nice alternative to the cruise ship. Some people like to do that, other people don't. So this is a nice way to get into Cuba and do something maybe they're more comfortable not on a cruise ship. So I like that choice.
Well, every person will have their own preference. Cruise lines serve a purpose, and those who want to scratch Cuba off their bucket list. In a very small sort of way, because maybe some of the cruise lines are only stopping in Havana for a short period of time. and some may go around and make one or two other port stops in Cuba. So they see a few things, they scratch it off, they're done. We operate more with the people who sometimes they get a taste for it and they want to come back, or they know that they want to see it in depth and go for the added experience of being on land and going around.
So typically, how long would one of these tours last?
Well, typically a short tour, just Havana only, would be 4 or 5 nights. You can do Trinidad and Havana and some of the countryside in 7 to 8 nights. And then you can go all the way to Santiago de Cuba and tour around some through the tobacco growing areas, and you can do 9 or 10 days or longer. And then we have custom tours where if somebody decides they want to spend a month in Cuba, we'll do it for you.
Wow.
Wow, that's great though. There's a lot of choices then, because some people really want to really have that immersion feeling and stay the month and really get a real feel for it. They don't want to just touch Cuba and go.
They do, especially because Cuba is kind of the forbidden fruit still. Even though more and more people have been there, it's still a destination where people have heard about it from their parents, from their grandparents, or just through movies and lore, and they just want to see it. So that's a big part of it. People want to immerse themselves in it and not just do the, if it's Tuesday, it's Havana type of trip.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
And not just touch it here and there
Right,
and here
just
and there.
really find out about it.
right.
Yes, exactly.
Be with the people. That's how you learn the country, is more people. And that's it. That's how I look at it.
It is. That's where you have your experiences in Cuba. And the Cuban people are wonderful people. They've survived and thrived under what we would consider extreme hardships economically and even socially. So they are just sometimes a wonder, and they are very proud people, unlike other destinations, sometimes in the Caribbean, sometimes Mexico, sometimes around the world, and our other destinations where people are on the street begging and hawking things. They do not do that in Cuba. There'll be tourist attractions, where there's one lady with a fan who smokes a cigar the size of a baseball bat. And she is in Old Havana. She's a tourist attraction. And if you try to take her picture without paying her, no, she has a fan that is faster than the draw on the old west. That fan will go up.
Oh my
I've
gosh.
even tried it like on a motor coach where you can't see me, and somehow she sees me, and she puts that up. So like everybody else, we wanted a picture of her for some of our displays, so we had to pay for her.
Yeah, that's too funny. That's great.
her living. That's what she does.
It is her living. Yes, it is.
Well, that just sounds really interesting. So I guess that if you wanted to do that and find out more, you would contact Kathy, who can hook you up with.
Since I learned stuff today too.
Yala,
so
she
there we
has
go.
answers now.
Yeah.
But if she doesn't, she can always call Richard.
call him.
He has the answers.
Well, I will get the answers that you need. But one thing I want to add too, it's always a big draw for Cuba, is the old cars.
Oh, absolutely.
The
Yes.
late 40s and 50s cars. It's where time has stopped. And these cars, many of them are private taxis, so you can hire them.
That's cool.
And most of all our trips, we do a transfer many times from the hotel to a restaurant. So we'll have a line of the old,
Oh my goodness,
the old
that's
Yank
great.
tanks, as some call them, down there, going down the Malecon, which is like Chicago's Lakeshore Drive, and then ending up in Old Havana, usually for a restaurant
cool.
stop. And then return trip, same thing. People love it, especially people who have actual memories of those cars.
well, yeah.
And they're time tripping right there.
Steering wheel's this big.
Steering wheels is as big as a wagon wheel. Yeah,
The way they
exactly.
should be.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Kidding. Okay, well, that sounds great, and I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to doing something like that. But now let's talk about these other places for a moment. With these, can you look for that same type of thing? Are any of these like a humanitarian type of thing, or it's just like people just want to go to Egypt?
Well, and that's a good question. And Cuba is a kind of a specific destination where you have to work within the U.S. legal construct. The other destinations, we're free to offer the various trips that people want to do. So basically, we offer a private touring where people can map out an itinerary that they want. They'll call you and say, we want to do this in Egypt, and we'll put it together for them and send it back to you so you can offer it to your clients. And those aren't restricted by it being a humanitarian type of trip or anything. Now, if somebody wants to do one, certainly we can do them. A big portion of our business in the Bible lands, which are Egypt and Israel and Jordan and Turkey, are religious pilgrimage trips. So we either do them individually, where people can take Christian and Jewish tours to those destinations, or they can take just regular trips, vacation type trips, which are maybe would focus on historical or cultural or all of the above. So there's many options available. They can do it as part of a scheduled tour that we offer, private touring, and even off a ship, they can do shore excursions.
That's cool.
So if they're sailing around in those areas of the world and want to get off the ship and visit Ephesus in Turkey, we can provide the ground for that.
Okay, so in doing this, when you're setting up a tour for someone, and they feel like they want to be in a group, they're a little maybe more comfortable being in a group, is it where they leave the airport together, they're on the same airline, they're collected from that point and move on from that, or how does that exactly work?
Well, if they're with a group, our guide meets them at the airport, so there's that comfort factor. We get as close as we can into the airport. In most cases, we can't, go into the secured area, which would be, custom and immigration. But after that, we meet them right outside, and we take them on the coach. Usually, the first stop is their hotel, so they can decompress. Because many of our destinations take a day to get to where we're going. So and then we have a dinner, and then the next day we start on programs. But our guide stays with them the entire trip, so there's nobody new coming on and off. The guide becomes their friend and their confidant, and also, of course, explains the destinations.
He'd be full of information, too, when people have questions and whatnot. He would know what to say, what to answer, or find out about it when somebody has questions. I mean, I think that's just a great way to do it,
That's very true. And in our areas of the world, not too many people will sit there and plan out a trip and go. I mean, you can look at a lot of things on the internet. I can guarantee you that virtually every hotel, B&B, Airbnb over in our areas of the world are going to have very beautiful pictures of what they're offering. The reality sometimes is a lot different. A 3-star hotel here versus a 3-star hotel in Egypt, it's a huge difference. You do not want to put your worst enemy, well, maybe your worst enemy, into a 3-star hotel, or even sometimes a 4-star hotel in Egypt, but so you need to know somebody who knows the lay of the land. That's why we have so very few destinations that we offer.
When we went to Egypt, we stayed in Cairo for the first night, just like you said, just to get relaxed, because the flight's a very long flight, like 9 hours from New York, and we stayed at a Sheraton that was incredible. But again, we're talking a much higher rated hotel too, and it was very, very nice. I mean, it really worked well. So we enjoyed it. It was good.
Well, the only thing I have to say to that is, you cannot go on the cheap to our destinations. It's just not something that you really want to do. Now, we offer Morocco, and back in the late 60s and early 70s, it was a popular hippie destination. And you could pick out places to stay, or you'd stay in a tent, or you'd sleep someplace. You could do it. You could still do it if you're still a hippie. But if you're not, you may want a little bit better accommodations. That's why they'll call you.
Exactly. Well, and some of these places, too, are so different than what we're accustomed to. It's nice to have the security of someone who knows, your tour guide, who knows what's up. It's nice to have a company plan the better places for you to be, because you are out of your element. And unless you're really an extremely savvy traveler, you don't know what to expect. And having the umbrella of someone kind of carrying for you is comfortable.
Well, exactly, and that's what we do. That's what other companies do in these areas of the world, because it is so foreign, and in many ways, and the language is foreign. In some of the big cities, most of the big cities, people will speak English, especially in a place like Israel and that. But once you get out in the countryside, in other countries, people are not speaking English all that well, and unless you're fluent in another in Arabic or another language, you're going to have a little bit of difficulty.
I'd say,
getting
yeah,
around.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
So if
exactly.
you want to have a comfortable trip where you come back and you're telling nice stories, not horror stories, if you really want to get involved in finding a great tour that Kathy can kind of get you hooked onto. Anything else, Rich, you want to let us know before we close our show today?
Well, just that a lot of people are used to traveling to the same destinations, and they want, in many cases, you'll hear, well, I thought about going to Egypt, or I thought about going to Israel, or I thought about going to Cuba, but, well, don't let the but get in your way, because what you're used to is nice, and what you're going to experience, I promise you, is even better. It'll be experiences that you will take with you for the rest of your life. And the other thing I'd like to add is a lot of people say about our name, Yalla, or Yalla Tours.
Yeah.
They
Yalla.
say, what does that actually mean? And what that means is come along or let's go in Hebrew. and
Really?
Arabic. Yes.
Oh, that is cool.
That is cute.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, come along.
And I have to agree with you. We were all a little apprehensive when we went to Egypt, and I'm being upfront on that.
Yes.
We were. What are we going to happen? What are we going to run into? What the whole thing is? Especially when we were met in Cairo with a guide that stayed with us the entire time. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, I would go back tomorrow. That's how much I enjoyed it there. That's how much I liked it. The people couldn't have been nicer to us. They were amazing. Going through some of the temples, they have the police there, the antiquities police that are dressed in white, and they would say, "Where are you from? Where are you from?" We would say, "The USA." "Oh, we love the USA. We love the USA." They couldn't have been nicer to us.
Yeah.
I just
That's
was
true.
great.
My son and daughter-in-law were just there in Egypt, and they said Egypt is like, tell the United States it's fine here.
Yes.
Come over, come and see
Yeah.
us. He said they were all so friendly and nice.
Yes,
Yeah.
Egypt has come a long way in the last 4 or 5 years, politically and socially.
Yes.
It's once again a very user-friendly destination, and despite what what you may hear on the popular reports and media about what the people think about the people in the
They
U.S.
don't.
on an
They
individual basis,
Yeah.
it's a lot different, like it is anywhere in the world. Like
Yes.
if you go to
Yes.
Michigan and you talk to somebody from Michigan, they may have this thing because you're a Cubs fan or a Sox fan, but otherwise you're a person to them.
Yeah, exactly. It's a
that's
whole
true.
different
Yeah.
feel when you're in that area because you hear the horror stories per se, and we never, ever, ever had any kind of a problem whatsoever. One of my biggest memories of that is we were in Aswan and we went to the market, and there was a gentleman there that had a spice tent, I guess I want to call it, and he had barrels and barrels of spices. The smell was amazing. One of the gentlemen bought saffron, and he had a little plastic bag about this big full of saffron. It was $0.25.
Oh, wow, because saffron's really expensive.
It was $0.25 is what he could get. It
Yeah.
was amazing. Just the difference, the whole thing. It was.
Yeah, cool.
I'd go back. Sorry.
All right. Well, you heard it. There's some great places for you to go visit, and that's Yalla Tours. And Kathy can help you at her place. For some reason, I'm just
Class
drawing.
Act Travel.
I have another place in mind that I do something else at, and it's a lot like that. I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to mess up your name. Class Act Travel, of course, it's in Worth. It's Kathy. Rich, thanks for being with us
Thank you,
today.
Jen. Thank you very
And we enjoyed hearing about this. And go out there and do something really adventuresome. Have some fun. We'll see you next time on The Travel Show. Bye-bye.